All right, we're back here. It is September 24th. We got news up on Breonna Taylor, the case, and the protests that have happened last night because they got pretty out of hand all throughout the U.S. That protests happened. They were some of them were peaceful, some of them were pretty violent. We'll get into it. Up first, from Newsweek, Breonna Taylor protests erupt across the U.S. amid widespread outrage of a verdict. Now, they don't really talk too much about the protest too much, at least Newsweek. CNN doesn't really either. They don't really give too much information besides the two officers that were shot in Louisville. That's pretty much it, but there was much more that happened last night, so we'll get into it. Violence is inevitable. Cops shot after protests erupt in Louisville. Yeah, there's video proof of people just saying, it's like, yeah, but I mean, we're probably gonna have to get confrontational. We got the man suspected of shooting two cops in Louisville is charged with wanton endangerment, just like only cop charged over Breonna Taylor's shooting, as 127 are arrested over BLM demonstration. Now, Daily Mail here is able to cover a bit more. Well, decided to actually cover a bit more. We got a suspected gunman has been charged with wanton endangerment after two Louisville cops were shot during protests over the Kentucky grand jury's decision not to bring murder charges against the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death. Lorenzo Johnson was arrested Wednesday night over the cop shootings and charged with assault of a police officer and wanton endangerment, the very same charge brought against the only cop to be indicted over Taylor's slaying. A total of 127 protesters were arrested during unrest in Taylor's home state of Louisville last night, with dozens more taken into custody amid demonstrations across America. In Seattle, Washington state, 13 people were arrested on charges including property destruction, resisting arrest, failure to disperse, and assault on a police officer after one cop was hit over the head with a baseball bat. Meanwhile, shocking footage has surfaced online of a Seattle cop riding their bicycle over the head of a protester lying on the ground. We'll get to all of these, don't worry. Louisville Interim Police Chief Robert Schroeder said the shooting of the two officers took place at Brook Street and Broadway about 8:30 p.m. Both of the officers who have not been identified were rushed to University of Louisville Hospital. They were both in a stable condition and one was undergoing surgery. So yeah, got cops being shot. Cops even doing some wrongdoing. They probably need to watch what they're doing, especially with the one bike cop. Breonna Taylor from Fox. Breonna Taylor protest suspect accused of shooting cops ID'd as Louisville sees nearly 100 arrests after grand jury. So, just more on the story from Fox. It's pretty much the same story from Daily Mail here. Then, we've got the facts from the Breonna Taylor death and the case that needs to be shown because there's a lot of protesters that are displaying a lot of false information about this case, especially on signs and in social media and all that. Breonna Taylor investigation reveals sequence of events that led to her death. Cops did knock on the door. Her boyfriend shot first, and she died in a hail of bullets next to him in the hallway and not in bed as previously claimed. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron on Wednesday gave a detailed account of the sequence of events in the March 13 shooting of Breonna Taylor. Investigation found the 26-year-old was shot dead in the hallway of her home while standing next to her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Cops fired 32 shots, 6 of which struck Taylor. Only one shot was determined to be fatal, Cameron said. Kentucky grand jury brought charges against Officer Brett Hankison, who was fired in the aftermath of the shooting. He was charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment. We already know all that stuff. We also know that Breonna Taylor's boyfriend is a career criminal. There was a bunch of drug dealing, even with her ex-boyfriend. He was a career criminal. It was probably only a matter of time before a police raid was gonna come upon the two men, and Breonna got caught in the crossfire. It's a shame, but she also put herself there. People trying to claim that, she's also a medical officer, which she was fired in 2017 of being one. It says the 26-year-old EMT was killed, but she was fired in 2017, so she hasn't been an EMT for over 2 years. There's also, the reports of the police. There's, the possible homicide that she was involved in, that they'd found a dead body in the trunk of a car that she was renting. So there's a lot of evidence that, contributes to this raid actually happening. But then the facts then around the raid are just being spread, like a lot of false facts being spread about this raid. And then I don't think any of these protesters know any of the drug dealing, any of the possible homicide that had taken place. There's a lot. It's not like she was a good girl or anything, but it is unfortunate that she did get shot. Her boyfriend shouldn't have also shot first. That's also on him. We got video emerges. Shields. We got Shields video emerges of riot supplies being unloaded from U-Haul truck in Louisville hours before 2 cops are shot during violent protests. U-Haul truck was seen unloading supplies on Wednesday afternoon in Louisville. And you can see the U-Haul truck over here that is coming out with signs and their shields and all that. The rented truck was spotted at 2 p.m. on Wednesday as Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron was still speaking at a press conference about the grand jury findings. Many of the supplies distributed from the truck were seen being used in the protests, including reading "Abolish the Police, Abolish Now," and featuring the 3 arrow logo associated with the far-left Antifa movement. Right, and Antifa's not an organization or anything. They only got U-Haul trucks giving people stuff, Antifa symbols and signs and, and shields and possibly weapons. A large number of makeshift riot shields were also distributed to the protesters who swarmed around the U-Haul, many featuring slogans supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Shields, we got shields, one woman is heard shouting. A woman who appeared to be an organizer was also seen distributing masks, goggles, and water bottles from the back of the truck. Such supplies are often used to counteract the effects of chemical irritants used by police in crowd control. Many of the supplies distributed from the truck were seen being used during several hours of peaceful protest marches that followed. But after night fell, the situation exploded into violence and 2 officers were shot. The pre-staged supplies, obviously ready before the grand jury decision was announced, raised questions about who was behind the organization and funding of the mysterious delivery. I mean, it probably doesn't take that much money to get a U-Haul truck, make up this stuff, and then make makeshift shields. Yeah, it's still going to cost probably a few $1,000s, but we know that these people got GoFundMes going in order to make these shields and riot gear and all that, and GoFundMe allows it, but then doesn't allow, I guess, right-wing groups or, to allow them to have GoFundMes to create shields to counteract these people and defend businesses. So, you got all that going on. We've also got from Breitbart, the live updates, Breonna Taylor protests break out in cities across the nation. So far, this has probably been the most detailed article. They've got, Twitter videos all over the place of what's been going on. And not just in Louisville, but all over the country. It's pretty much just the updates on everything. What Biden says, Kamala Harris ended up saying. So, I would say that this article here, if you want to get pretty much the full scope of what's been happening, this was probably one of the better articles to search through because, you just got all the different locations. You just got videos of what's been happening so you guys can actually see what's going on, see with your own eyes. But just keep reading as much as you can. So as you see, I'm just scrolling through this, and it just keeps going. Atlanta, Georgia, New York. I mean, it's Texas, Wisconsin. It just keeps going. It just keeps going to all the different events that took place over last night across the country. We got Portland rioters throw what appears to be a massive Molotov at police just hours after 2 cops shot in Louisville. So, yeah, someone was throwing Molotovs at them, causing the police to disperse a bit. Because, who wants to be set on fire? Nobody does. Nobody. Portland rioters threw what appeared to be a massive Molotov cocktail or firebomb at police just hours after 2 officers were shot during the riot in Louisville. The large explosion seems to have sent reporters, rioters, and police running. Yeah, I'm sure it would. So yeah, they got Molotovs being thrown at them. Prior to that explosion, the violent rioters were launching large fireworks at officers. So it's just an escalation. They started with fireworks, and then someone decided to take it one step further. This is from Washington Post. Officer struck in head with bat. Another officer appears to ride bike over person's head during Seattle protests. We'll get to that right now. The Seattle Antifa attempts to murder. Oh, jeez. Let me restart the second. We'll get into that right now. Seattle Antifa attempts to murder a police officer in plain sight by hitting him in the head with a metal bat. He runs for his life after he's knocked down and surrounded by rioters. So what you can see is that, you know, he was pretty much the last police officer on a bike to get through. He got knocked over, sprayed some pepper spray at the crowd that was behind him, and then another person comes up from behind him, from behind the officer, and just whacks him in the back of the head. Luckily, he had a helmet on, but still, it's a metal bat that can cause problems. The guy didn't pull a gun out or anything or try to, you know, he ran. He basically took his bike and he ran to try to catch up to the other officers. And then we got, also in Seattle, rider lays in the street to try and stop the police from moving in on bicycles. One officer rides over him instead. So, yeah, it doesn't show that he actually, you know, rides over him like he's actually, you know, riding the bicycle, but he's walking the bicycle, and it does go over the guy's head. Go straight over his face. So that officer, you know, you need to watch what you're doing, dude, because that's not going to look good for your side, that's for sure. You could have just walked right around him and then arrested him. That's all really. You didn't have to go over his face with 2 wheels. Guy obviously wasn't super seriously injured, otherwise it would have been, you know, the most breaking thing out of the whole protest. Up next, we got Breonna Taylor. Protesters threatened to knock out diners at a Florida restaurant. Protesters are now going restaurant by restaurant to chant at diners on Beach Drive in St. Pete. A lot of diners yelled back, starting multiple confrontations. This one was the most significant. Protesters took over a couple's table. Not sure why they were targeted specifically. So yeah, one guy decided to just sit down, try to be like, I'm taking this table over. The woman's like, this is my table. And then tries to call the cops. And then the guy that she's with is just like, all right, you know, we'll take this, you know, just take it, you know, calmly, and we'll call the police. You know, he's being pretty calm about the situation, but then more protesters come up and they start chanting at them. It's like, one of them says, I ought to knock your old A boyfriend the F out. The man threatened as he derided the woman as a wild Karen in her natural effing habitat. Which she wasn't. I mean, she was just sitting there, and then they came up and started antagonizing and being confrontational with her. I don't know if anything happened before that. But what we see is them antagonizing the diners. They didn't have to go up there and antagonize them like that. I mean, come on. Come on, man. Just like Joe Biden would say. Breonna Taylor family lawyer blasts grand jury decision as sham proceeding. Well, you know what? You got the family $12 million. And the family seems to be happy with the $12 million. Because otherwise, they would have been pursuing more charges and been going after these police more if they didn't care about money instead. So they took the $12 million. You can say whatever you want. You got them $12 million. That's all I can say. Family took the $12 million. They didn't have to. They could have pursued further. But they decided to take $12 million. Louisville University cancels classes following Breonna Taylor charges. Urges students to channel your feelings. Louisville College announced it has canceled classes following the announced charges surrounding the death of Breonna Taylor. And another college was... one of the teachers was like, oh yeah, you don't have to come to classes today, mourn. And you know, take time to mourn. It's like, what? Why do you need to mourn? School systems are just crazy. They're insane right now. I personally just wouldn't go to a college. I didn't even want to when I was young. When I was, 10 years ago, I didn't want to because I already knew that they were indoctrination camps. Denver police detained driver after vehicle plows into Breonna Taylor protesters. A driver was detained in Denver on Wednesday night after allegedly plowing his vehicle through a crowd of Breonna Taylor protesters, according to reports. Video posted on social media showed protesters surrounding the unidentified driver's vehicle, some pressing on the hood to block its path when the car accelerated through the crowd and knocked at least one person to the side of the road. I mean, we already know that people have feared for their lives inside of their own car. People have been shot at inside of their own car. I'm sure this guy's not taking any chances. No one is taking chances when these protesters are surrounding their car, getting on top of it, and banging on it. They're going to hit that gas. Anybody with a sense will get the F out of there. Seattle City Council overrides mayor's veto and begins to defund the police. So that's not going to look good on Seattle. They're going to have way more protests and rioting. They're going to show up to the city council's houses now, and then they're going to demand that the police do something. Because they've already they've already defunded them, and they already want and they're already calling like why they're not doing anything. Well, they don't have obviously you don't have their support. And they don't have your support, city council. So no wonder. Idaho police arrest 3 at outdoor church worship event in defiance of mask mandate. So this isn't really on the Breonna Taylor ones. It's just a separate protest, on mask mandate. But police are still willing to arrest on, just on the mayor's edict, on governor's edict. And it's a shame for these police officers not willing to just stand up to that. That's all I got to say. It's a shame. Then you got Louisville Police Department refuses to release Daily Caller reporters despite confirming press credentials. Yeah, a couple of Shelby Talcott and Jorge Ventura were arrested in Louisville Wednesday night as part of a mass detention and have since been in jail for 12 hours despite the police being informed numerous times that they are members of the media. So they'll probably end up getting released, probably not actually being charged with the other rioters, but they were saying that, yeah, we're just charging everybody. We're not, doesn't matter. Apparently they weren't in an observation area for journalists, but who knows if that's if there even was one, if they were even told, who knows, but they'll probably end up being released, hopefully, and not being charged, because the journalists definitely shouldn't be charged. They were just there to be journalists. Well, that's pretty much it then on the Breonna Taylor protests and riots and everything that's kind of happened last night. Got pretty crazy. We'll probably maybe come up with another update because this weekend is probably just going to be just as crazy. It doesn't look like it's going to stop. We're going to have more protests and more riots throughout the weekend. We'll cover it. I'll be here. Till next time. Till the next video later today. I'll see you. Have a good one.